Lacrosse community, my name's Ryan Berns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills you gain from the sport to ultimately live your best life possible. Today, we're so fortunate to be joined by Pete Lawrence, president of NXT Lacrosse, Hall of Fame from Roanoke, a D1 collegiate coach for Scotland's international team. He's been all over the place doing so much with the sport, growing the game and allowing those to reach their full potential. Pete, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. For those in our community that aren't quite aware of your story, can you share how you got into lacrosse in the first place?
Yeah, no. First, Ryan, thanks for having me. Anything I can do to really feel like I'm helping grow the game, spread the message. Lacrosse has done so much for me. As I was kind of like thinking before we started when I was 14. Lacrosse was still, I'm from Massachusetts originally. It was just starting there. So the town I grew up in didn't have a youth lacrosse program, didn't have a high school lacrosse program. And my dad had played. He went to a boarding school in Massachusetts called Tabor Academy, where he played lacrosse. And so I'd owned a lacrosse stick, would have catches with him, but never had the opportunity to play until my freshman year in high school. I went to Tabor Academy as well, more so for hockey. If you grow up in the Boston area, you grow up playing hockey. There's a little less pond skating nowadays, right? It's a little warmer, but that was how I grew up. I grew up playing ice hockey, pond skating, and had a lacrosse stick and had catches with my dad, but never had the chance to play until high school. And then ultimately fell in love with it and moved away from hockey and had the opportunity to play at Roanoke College. Yep, D3 guy, proud of that, and took me down to Virginia. Had a great experience, made great friends, and the day I graduated from Roanoke, I got into college coaching out west originally at Whittier College. Was my first college coaching job, and like I said, between playing and coaching, I've been doing this for 32 years now as a player and a coach, and so it's crazy to think that the better part of my life has been around the sport of lacrosse and all my friends and the opportunities to travel around the world, coaching the game, playing the game. I owe everything to the sport of lacrosse.
Pete, thanks for giving us that perspective right there. And we can sense how much lacrosse has been a part of your life with what you're sharing there. Do you have a pinnacle moment, whether it's playing, coaching, running tournaments?
I would say my pinnacle moment is as a coach. The 2011 America East Championship. We were the underdogs. That was against Stony Brook, at Stony Brook. They were a top 10 team in the country. That was the Jordan McBride, Kevin Crowley, right, who is a Hall of Fame, probably professional player, a guy who actually spends a lot of time here in Philly like me, and so I get to run into him. But we were definitely the underdogs, won the America East Championship, and went to the NCAAs and played Cornell, which was Rob Pennell's Cornell team. We didn't end up winning that game, but I think the score was maybe like 12-5, 11-5, something like that. It was the first time Hartford had ever gone to the NCAA tournament. And so that was my pinnacle moment, more for anything of, when I first got there, we didn't win a game, right? I had an 0-13 season, which I'd never been a part of. I'd never played on any team, coached any team that never won one game. So the point of the story is the program was not in a great place, but there was, I think, a lot of potential, and, it was really about recruiting the right guys. And so for those guys that had an 0-13 season, by the time they were seniors, they were winning the America East, going to the NCAA tournament. It was cool. Like a year ago during the pandemic, those guys all scheduled a 10-year anniversary Zoom, right? It's been, and so we got together. We actually watched the game together over Zoom. That one of this kid, Carter Bender, who was an All-American on that team, Canadian, I think kind of helped organize it. We watched the game together, and it was cool to relive it, 10 years later, and to see what it had meant to those guys. So that was my pinnacle moment.
Oh man, to hear about a team being able to overcome an over season, but being able to build time and time again to ultimately reach a pinnacle for itself, I can imagine how inspiring that is. How did you go about building that team or building the culture, recruiting the right people? When you look back at it, would you do things differently, or how do you go about leadership in that respect?
I was a young Division I head coach, and so probably in that 0-13 season, I probably could have done some things differently and better to maybe win some games. I guess I would be saying I'm thankful to the administration. I think in this day and age, sometimes coaches don't have as much longevity. All it takes is just a couple bad seasons, and you don't stick by your coach, and you go, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time for a change. So I think you just win with people. I say that all the time in business. At Next, you win with people. And we just needed to get the right kids that wanted to work hard, that were maybe a little bit looked over in the recruiting process, but had upside, had character. And we really, I think, started with going, we're going to do great stuff in the community. And so we started doing a lot of community service, getting their guys to be visible and feel like, hey, we're going to give back. And that speaks volumes to someone's character. The same on the academic side. We really said, hey, we're going to start to take a lot of pride in the type of student athletes we are. And the bar became, everybody gets a 3-0 in the program. And, we won the academic cup and kind of community service awards prior to winning that 2011 championship. And I think that was, speaks volumes to the culture and the character that, we were trying to build. That, again, we had good people, and that's how we were going to win, with good people that had great character. And then, with time came the winning and the results, but first and foremost, it was the academics and kind of being leaders in the community that I think led to eventually success on the lacrosse field.
People always say how you do some things, how you do everything, and laying down a foundation of just integrity, having good character, willing to work hard, show up for others, I think goes a far way. Is that your leadership style of giving back first, or what does leadership mean to you, Pete?
Thinking about that coming in, I think it really varies. I've learned based on the age population you're working with, right? So I predominantly work now at Next with youth, that are trying to aspire to get to, where I once was, to the college level. And so the intensity and, the message, I think is different for, an elementary school kid, right? Where you're going, this is all about fun, right? It's not about winning. I see people that, are too focused on that. So I think if I were to say, if I'm working with an elementary school kid, it's all about being positive and instilling a love for the game, I would say is the primary value. You want kids to want to come back to the next practice because they had fun. And at the end, you win some, you lose some, but I'm really not, or the coaches that are working with me or for me, I don't think we're worried about winning. We're worried about the love of the game and wanting kids to continue to play. I think at the middle school, age, the leadership really becomes about instilling that, work ethic. Like, hey, if you really want to get to the high school level, which is another jump, now kids need to start to understand player development and going, okay, I need to do the stuff that coaches are saying at practice, but I also need to now start working outside of practice, right? But I don't know if elementary skill, like I have a daughter who's in 4th grade, like I'm not making her go out and like go on the rebounder in 4th grade. I just wanted to love it, But at the middle school, that needs to become the lacrosse leadership style of going, how do I motivate kids to want to do more beyond just practice? And then, you get to the high school age, and I think it becomes a lot more intense, and I definitely think my personality suits probably a little bit more of the high school and the college age. But I also think the you have to have the most patience, and you have to probably actually be the best coach to coach the youngest kids. You got to have a little bit more in your playbook of creativity. It's actually easier, in my opinion, to coach higher level lacrosse than it is lower level lacrosse, to keep kids' attention. And so I've done it all. Every age group, I feel like every level, and like you said, international lacrosse, college lacrosse, club lacrosse, division 1, 2, 3. I've really kind of dipped my toe in everything. And so really, I think my message would be for anybody is like, you have to be willing to adjust your leadership style. It's not one way and only that way, works, because the way I would coach Team Scotland, which I think for those guys was probably a little bit eye-opening for them. Those are men, like, it's like, hey, what do you do for your day job? Oh, I'm a doctor. I'm a chemical engineer. You're 26 years old. So the way you're gonna, talk to someone who's 26, is very different than the way you're going to talk to someone who's 6 or 8 years old versus, 14, 15. And I think you have to be willing to adjust your style is probably what I've learned, having kind of run the full gamut. But I would say I'm a coach. My style is probably more than anything is I believe in, I use the word challenge a lot. I want to challenge, kids to be more committed, to be more focused, to set their goals a little higher. And, I think you have to set kind of clear standards of how we're going to go about our business, and then hold kids to those standards, whether they be college students, or high school students. And that way there isn't like a mixed message of like, hey, why is coach being so hard on me right now? It's like, well, we've kind of set the expectations and you're not meeting them. I expect more. And I think what I always learned is I appreciated when I played, when people held me to a high standard, and didn't like kind of look the other way and go, hey, it's okay that you're talking at the back of the line. It's okay that I know this isn't your best effort, and that's what I loved about my college coach. He called me out when he knew I could run harder, when he knew I could do more in the classroom. And I think that's how I try and, coach. And that's my leadership style. When I know someone's not giving their best, I'm going to tell them, whereas some might not do that,
I like that transparency, because at the end of the day, for me, I think the best leaders are able to unlock the potential in others. They see something that someone doesn't even see in themselves. And in your case, it seems like you challenge them to rise up to that occasion and to ultimately become very successful. Now, over the course of your career, have you ever made tough choices as a leader that maybe didn't resonate well with the team or with the families, that looking back, you're so glad you made that decision, but in the moment was really hard to make?
I think that's like how you grow as a coach. Absolutely. I've made some terrible decisions as a coach in terms of just personnel or feedback, in-game decisions, and I think I was actually on a text thread with some of my friends the other day, and like we were talking about that. I think messaging, right, as a coach is so important, and being able to always choose the right message, for a team. Like, all right, they're a little down and we just lost a game. Like, do you continue to pile on, or do you try and pick them up? What does the team really need? And I think that's what really makes a great coach, is like you have to master the message. And I think, obviously you enjoy doing this, right? And so I'm sure, like me, like you read a lot of these books on coaching, so you listen to other podcasts and like things like that. Why is someone like a Nick Saban, or a Bill Belichick or a John Wooden, or a Mike Krzyzewski, why have they been so successful? And you go, they're really like the master of the message. They know what their team needs to hear when they need to hear it, and they push that button, right? And when they don't need to, they don't overcoach, they don't overthink it. And so I think for any young coach, like that is what is so important, is like to always be thinking like, what is the message the team needs to hear to get the best out of the team? And I think of all the time, like even just this weekend, I spent a lot of time coaching box lacrosse this weekend, and I probably maybe got 50% of the message right, if I'm being honest. Like, afterwards you kind of go, oh, the team responded, and then other times the team didn't respond. It's like, you know what? it probably wasn't the message they needed to hear. They needed to hear something different, and I think that's what you're always striving to deliver as a coach, is the right message.
How do you go about, because for me, that's emotional intelligence. It's being able to understand not only a single person, but a collective group, and then be able to tell them what they need to hear to be successful. How, I know you mentioned books and podcasts. Is that how you're adapting your skills, or how do you go about growing as a coach?
Yeah, I think always trying to be a student of the game, I love going and watching other practices. I listen to podcasts, I read books. I think you always have to be a student of the game, and I think the best coaches they don't ever think, hey, I've hit my ceiling, there's nothing more I can learn. Tonight we're doing a thing that we call winter wellness. This guy, Mitch Green, who's a sports psychologist, obviously coming out of this COVID era, and people like to get their information, I think, a little bit more like this, in this format. And so we've been doing this thing the last couple of years, and I'm going to listen tonight to Mitch Green talk for 20-25 minutes about sports psychology and how you manage the grind of the season. I think it's going to be a great message for our players and our parents, maybe more so for the parents, how to help manage their kids. But yeah, I think the point is you always have to be trying to grow as a coach. And if you're not, then you're probably never going to reach your full potential.
There's some humility to that, I think, knowing that we're not the best versions of ourselves yet, but willing to work hard and put in the time, the effort, the energy, and ultimately that allows us to reach those next stages. To pivot and talk about the youth now and the kids, especially as you mentioned, your own kids, how do we empower them to be successful? So whether they're elementary school, middle school, high school, college, what should those guys be doing or girls be doing to reach that next level?
The two things I think of are being open-minded and being proactive. There's so many great programs out there. You can play club lacrosse, you can play Division 1, 2, 3. I think there's a little bit of a mindset, at least here in the Mid-Atlantic, Division 1 or bust. Again, I'm a proud, Division 3 lacrosse player. That was a great experience for me. I know tons of kids and families that have played, at high level, club lacrosse programs. I don't think people understand that, they're well organized. They played in national tournaments. It's competitive, that people genuinely care about that. Especially if you're here in the Mid-Atlantic, you think it's just this because this is what we see on TV. This is what we hear the most about. And then I think the second side of, being open-minded to everything that's out there is just being proactive. And, it's like, if you want to get to the next level, you need to do research. You need to know what all your options are. And you can't just think, hey, the college coaches and those opportunities, they're going to come find me. You need to do some work on your own to find what those opportunities are, and not do it at the last minute. My daughter is a freshman, and she has, a call at 1 o'clock today with, Candace, Bossel, who is the director of our women's, program. And I do those type of things too. And so we're trying to help, our, aspiring student athletes, in our program, just be aware of what's out there, and again, get out ahead of it, and not wait to the last minute and think it's just going to happen.
I love being able to hear your daughters tapping into the women's coordinator on your side, because we don't know what we don't know. But if we're able to leverage good people that have a good relationship with us and want to see us succeed, they're able to open up those blind spots or really help us transcend and ultimately achieve our top goals. And I think that's what some of the best leaders do. They're able to connect people together. They're able to see what someone's trying to accomplish and make it easier for them to get there. Pete, I know we're wrapping up on time here, so I'd love to hear, do you have any last thoughts on lacrosse or leadership that you could share with us?
What's terrible is my computer keeps saying it's going to restart here. Hopefully that's not going to happen now. I think I got the 15-minute clock on. What a coincidence that, the required update. No, my only last thing is, again, almost like how we started. I think the lacrosse community is special. That's what attracted me to the sport. I think people are just generally a little bit more caring. I think people in the sport of lacrosse, one thing that's always really value education, I think is something that like we talk a lot about, in our club program of like grades matter. You're not doing this because at the end of the day, you're going to go right, like someone who maybe aspires to play basketball or football or baseball. And there's, the ceiling is so high to go, hey, you could, you could play professionally someday and really make a living. I don't think that's why someone aspires to play in the NLL or the PLL. And so I think the opportunity is, to leverage the sport of lacrosse that you love and those relationships, but to get a great education, to meet great people. And just like I've been blessed to, be able to, travel the world, right? So coaching the 2018 Scottish national team, I don't know if I ever would have gone to Israel and, visited, the old city and, floated in the Dead Sea and, done things like that if I hadn't, been coaching Team Scotland, and so I think it can open up a lot of opportunities, and it just makes you appreciative, I think, of a lot of different people's backgrounds and cultures, which is what people need nowadays. So yeah, I've been blessed. I love the sport, and I would love to see more and more people playing the sport. So anything I can do to help grow the game, I'm always all for.
Pete, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more conversations in the future, but it's incredible to hear your story and how you go about leadership and how lacrosse has impacted your life. So thank you so much again for being on our conversation today.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I appreciate what you're doing for the sport as well.